December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
In a surprise assault, American warplanes were caught on the ground and bombed. Most of them were disabled. That crippled our air opposition to the Japs, and their planes were able to swarm over the harbor and bomb and torpedo the warships there.
The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
At the time of the attack, I was in my room shaving. The word was passed, away fire and rescue party. I glanced at my clock as I was leaving my room and noticed the time was a few minutes before 8 a.m. Back on the third deck, all the lights were out and only a few flashlights were available. About this time, the word came along from man to man to abandon ship. I helped a partially incapacitated man to the second deck and then joined in a line, passing injured men along to the ladder by the dental office. I lost all knowledge of time when here, but after some minutes, Ensign McClellan, who was beside me in the line, said he was feeling faint and then collapsed. I noticed other men dropping around me. I stepped over to pick up Mr. McClellan, but when I stepped over, I got dizzy and fell. I seemed to be paralyzed from the waist down. I had a great difficulty breathing, but enough strength in my arms to drag myself to the ladder and up a couple steps before I collapsed completely. My life is proof of the courage and disregard of personal danger on the part of my unknown shipmates. Daniel Lewis Westfall.
Initial recoveries actually began very soon after the incident. So on December 8th through December 16th, they recovered 29 individuals that they were able to identify, but the vast majority they could not identify individually, just they didn't have enough information. The salvage operations, so starting in July of 1942 until May of 1944, the operations began. The remains had been in the ship for several years, decomposed and placed. They were already commingled at that point when the recovery operations had started. So they put all of the lower limbs in one casket, all of the skulls in one casket, which really kind of even furthered the commingling issue.
In the early 2000s, a Pearl Harbor survivor began to do some of his own research and discovered that one of the caskets in the punch bowl was potentially related to 5 people, 5 Oklahoma casualties, but he felt from the historical records that we could make an identification. So JPAC, back in the day, the Joint POW-MIA Accounting Command, disinterred remains in 2003 from that single casket. And in fact, yes, there were 5 bundles of remains in that casket, but when we actually took them out and started to analyze the remains, there were around 100 people based on DNA in that single casket. So if we go back to the around 400 that are unaccounted for following the war, what you have in the first casket is 25% represented by at least 1 bone. And so we said very early on, and we being the laboratory arm of now DPAA, we need to disinter all the caskets at the same time in order to have success on this. If this one casket is like this, we can expect that the rest of the 60, a little bit over 60 caskets are going to be commingled.
The Oklahoma project is a huge project because we have so many service members that we needed to identify. So there were 394 sailors and Marines that were unaccounted for before any modern day efforts to identify. And that's a large number of families that are looking for answers for their loved one. Today, the big difference is that we can do DNA testing on the skeletal remains. So back in the 1940s, DNA testing was not available. It wasn't a scientific technology that had been discovered yet. And so today, we can use that DNA to help us sort the bones into single individuals. Since they're so mixed up, we need that DNA to tell us which bones have the same DNA. And then that DNA can be compared to the DNA from living family members. And that's a really critical piece of the identification process.
Seeing the generational effect and the emotional effect it's had on the entire family since, for example, 1941, is a really powerful message to me and my colleagues that what we're doing is important, and despite the challenges, we need to keep working together for our mission. To the families who lost a loved one on board the Oklahoma, I want to say thank you for all the years you've waited. Thank you for your loved one's service, and I hope that what we've done fulfills at least a part of the hole that was left when that person was lost in your family.
Finally home nearly 80 years after his death, Steward Mate First Class Ignacio Camacho Farfan was laid to rest at the Guam Veterans Cemetery in Pidi November 8.
Petty Officer Farfan, this Veterans Cemetery welcomes you home today to your final resting place. Carried on the arms of your Navy brothers and sisters, your coffin swathed in an American flag and escorted by the descendants of your family's bloodline. You are surrounded today by an entire community. Rest easy, shipmate. We have the watch.
Our lost sheep has been found, and it is now time to celebrate and welcome him home, and to give thanks to him and to so many who've paid the ultimate sacrifice for the paradise we live in.
Farfan was killed in action at 21 years old while serving aboard USS Oklahoma during the attack on Pearl Harbor December 7, 1941. His remains were identified earlier this year as part of a Defense POW MIA accounting agency project which sought to identify the service members who died during the attack. Farfan's remains returned home November 5th, escorted by his niece Julia Farfan Tedtaotao, along with her son and daughter.
God knows that he served his country well. He died for his country because he loved his country. He's really a brave man. All the good ones go first, but when the time comes, we'll be there. We love you.
For Joint Region Marianas, I'm Alana Chargula.
In this binder that the Navy handed to us were letters from my grandfather, who was in a refugee camp here on Guam. He had typed a letter to the Navy searching for his little brother, and has that letter. And when I first saw that, I was like, wow, Ma, check this out. Like, he was like held captive, you know, and still searching for his brother. And then knowing that the Navy had written a letter back to him, although it was a few months because, you know, like mail was being held by the Japanese and whatnot, when they conquered Guam up until our Guam liberation. But just knowing that my aunt Chai was searching for him, and then my Uncle Chua was searching for him also. Just finally he's home.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. have seen him in the watchfires of 100 circling camps. They have builded him an altar in the evening dews and damps. I have read his righteous sentence by the dim and flaring lamps. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. I have read a fiery gospel written burnished rows of steel. As ye deal with my condemners, so with you my grace shall deal. Let the hero born of woman crush the serpent with his heel. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat.
This evening, one of Guam's very own, Tedtaotao First Class, Ignacio Farfan, has returned home. Just as God rejoices in the return of one lost sheep, we rejoice today that the remains of Tedtaotao Farfan have been found and rightly returned home to the island of Guam.
Across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. He has sounded forth the trumpet that shall never call retreat. He is sifting out the hearts of men before his judgment seat. Oh, be swift, my soul, to answer. Oh, be jubilant, my feet. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. In the beauty of the lilies, Christ was born across the sea, with a glory in his bosom that transfigures you and me. As he died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. He hath loosed the fateful lightning of his terrible swift sword.